What if Tank Davis, who can punch, who is a hell of a fighter, who is a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, what if he lands a punch on this bigger guy's chin, right, who's not a professional fighter? What happens?
But if they do it for real, Tank is highly capable of taking Jake Paul out. So the exhibitions that I like to see are ones that either I can mythically look at and say, wow, well, if he would have did that back when he was 10 years younger or 8 years or 12 years ago, he would have beat him. You understand me? Because we know boxing.
Which if he hits you because he's so accurate, he's gonna drop you or put you to sleep. But like not necessarily power punch. Like Edwin De Los Santos is a hard hitter. He would even have a hard time with rollies. I'm not even kidding.
Boxing legends are weighing in on why Gervonta Tank Davis would completely dismantle Jake Paul in just 3 rounds. Gareth A. Davies points out that Gervonta stayed calm and quiet throughout the press conference and face-off, barely reacting to Jake's constant jokes about his height. He explains that Tank looked hesitant at first, almost like he was pressured into accepting the fight. But Gareth believes that once the bell rings, Tank will unleash a furious storm of punches and combinations that will completely silence Jake Paul.
Went about the presser.
He reminded me of a northern football fan being dragged to a shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon rather than being allowed to go to his favourite Liverpool seat. You'll relate to that, won't you? It was almost like he'd been shackled and dragged there against his will. Even when they faced off, it was as if Jake Paul had a bad smell about him or something. He didn't want to get near Jake Paul. He didn't want to. I'm just going to plug this in as well. I just realised it's not plugged in. It's almost as if he didn't want to indulge anyone at all. Like he'd signed up against his will, and then it's like he'd been signed up against his will. The agents and his manager and his handler had dragged him there without briefing him on what was going on and where it would be and what time it would take place. And there was this oaf in his mind standing there in front of him, this big oaf who kept posturing, and it just didn't do anything to him. I wondered at one point whether he was going to burst out with a combination of punches or something and just drop Jake Paul, who was being, measuring him up and going down to his height, and it was all very peculiar in my view. Like he really wasn't taking it seriously.
Ryan Garcia doesn't hide his disappointment about the matchup between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. He calls it a total insult to boxing, saying that the huge difference in size and weight makes it completely unfair. According to Ryan, this isn't a real boxing contest. It's a publicity stunt made to grab views instead of respect. He insists that true boxing is about skill, legacy, and honor, not social media drama. Ryan says watching a smaller fighter like Gervonta face a naturally bigger man like Jake just feels wrong, especially when the fight is being promoted as a fair competition. He believes the event sends the wrong message to young fighters, that hype and money are more important than hard work and discipline. For Ryan, this fight isn't about entertainment. It's about defending the soul of boxing. He sees this as a mockery of the sport he has devoted his entire life to.
Mainly Jake's end. We're not falling for the Disney Channel bit no more. We're not falling for you're not a fighter no more. We're not falling for that. You're ranked as a cruiserweight and you're out here trying to fight a lightweight. And then on top of it, you were just talking about fighting Anthony Joshua. That doesn't make no sense. And, I just felt like it was a disgrace to boxing and kind of it was not a good move by Jake Paul. I understand people saying, Gervonta got to go get his money, blah, blah, blah. But, we're not talking about that shit. We're talking about the sport, bro. We're not talking about, you got to get that money, bro. Yeah, but everybody's open to criticism. That's the whole point of this media shit. That's why they talk about basketball players. They don't talk about, LeBron's making too much. Nobody cares, bro. If LeBron's missing the shot, he's missing the fucking shot. So at the end of the day, bro, I just thought it was a disgrace to the sport. Because on one end, you got the casuals, right? The casuals don't see the weight difference. They see Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Yeah. And if Gervonta Davis doesn't fuck up Jake Paul, they're going to think Jake Paul is some pound-for-pound champion type of fighter. Yeah. And to me, that's just it's tricking the public, and it's kind of bullshit, bro, at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if Gervonta was Jake Paul's size, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There probably wouldn't even be a fight.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I just think that it's a disgrace to boxing.
Well, we got to play devil's advocate because people were saying, well, Ryan, you called out Jake Paul before too, so how would you say that? What do you have to say to the people that were saying that to you?
Well, I'm way bigger than Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis is 5'4", and his last fight was at 133. My last fight was 147, and I walk around 170. So, I mean, 170 to 190, whatever, you know, however big is not too much difference. But you got Gervonta Davis, he's actually really small. Like, when I fought him, like, he's small.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a very unfair fight. Nobody was complaining when Jake Paul was fighting Julio Cesar Chavez.
Right.
Nobody was complaining when he was fighting Anthony Joshua. And I still think Jake Paul's a cool dude. But shit, he's calling me out on my shit. I'm gonna call him out on his shit, bro. That's a fucking disgrace of a fight.
Yeah.
You know it. Just like Mike Tyson, low key was a disgrace, but we accepted it. But he was 60 years old. I mean,
right.
What the f are we talking
he's
about
60.
here?
That's crazy.
Sean Porter looks at this matchup from a veteran's perspective. To him, it's a sign of where boxing is heading. He says the new generation of fighters seems more focused on making quick money than on building lasting greatness. In his opinion, Gervonta Davis has joined that list of fighters who are chasing paydays instead of legacy-defining fights. Porter explains that boxing legends used to take big risks, fighting the best opponents to secure their place in history. Now, many fighters prefer brand deals, social media fame, and short-term profits. He believes Tank's decision to fight Jake Paul instead of pursuing serious opponents exposes how much the sport's priorities have changed. Porter insists that Tank is one of the most talented boxers alive, but says he's wasting his prime years on sideshow fights instead of real challenges that define true champions. And it's not just Tank he's criticizing. It's the entire trend of money-driven matchups that, according to him, are slowly stripping boxing of its soul.
Why are you doing that? How do you sort of see this scenario now for him?
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it, what to really say about it. I've only been asked this when it's presented to me. That's when I think about it, and I can't really come up with a good answer for it. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense to me. Of course, we know the size differential, and the list goes on from there. I don't know, man. I think we're entering a generation now, or a phase now where fighters, I don't know if it's fighters, I don't know if he doesn't care about the legacy, or if he feels like this fight doesn't matter, I'll get back to the legacy. I just don't know. This is truly it's not a legacy fight, but of course it is a generational money fight, so.
Many analysts call this fight nothing more than a money grab. But they also say the problem isn't just the fighters, it's the audience too. They argue that today's fans are feeding into this circus. Real technical fights between elite professionals often go unnoticed, while exhibition matches and influencer bouts dominate the headlines.
If I can do any of this stuff, I promise.
Experts blame social media's short attention span for turning boxing into a drama show.
I don't know,
they emphasize that the Jake Paul phenomenon isn't Jake's fault alone. It's the fans who reward chaos over real skill.
I just happen to be lucky enough to
when
do
audiences
something.
tune in only for trash talk and viral moments, serious fighters lose motivation to take real risks for respect. Analysts also say that this trend has blurred the line between professional competition and entertainment. True champions fight for belts. Influencers fight for clicks. And as long as people keep buying these pay-per-views, the balance will always lean towards spectacle instead of sport.
Has evolved to where it's at. I'll expand on that. For one, you have good fights where I'm not talking about these type of fights, crossover type of fight, former Disney guy, influencer stuff. Not. And Jake Paul has really promoted himself and acquitted himself to the point where he's kind of a boxer. Now, he hasn't fought the top names, I get it, blah, blah, blah. But he's doing his thing. He's training like a boxer. He's not like taking it lightly, like streaming and then working on his YouTube more than he's working on his boxing. It is what it is, right? But beyond that, let's keep it going. I told you I'm about to really get unpacked. Subscribe to the channel. The reality is, the reason why I'm saying I blame you, the fans, is because we've had some very good fights, like David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, whatever. I'm talking in the last 5-10 years, right? Very good fights, all boxing. All boxing. So not talking influencer or any type of crossover fight, right? Good fights. And then you got boxing fans in a niche sport who didn't further the exposure by advertising or buying the fight, mostly buying the fight with piracy and whatnot. So now we're at a point in this society where these companies, they're like, all right, they see the piracy is a problem. Now they're looking for sure shot, must win type of scenarios. That's why we're getting these fights that some people, purists and diehards, are calling wonky fights. You know what I mean? It is your fault.
Professionals across the sport share one major concern: the massive size difference between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Jake normally walks around at cruiserweight, while Tank's natural division is lightweight. Analysts stress that even if Davis is far more skilled, the laws of physics still apply. Reach, weight, and power all matter. They warn that putting Tank against Jake in a sanctioned match could be both unfair and dangerous. Jake has taken punches from naturally bigger men and kept going, while Tank, despite being known for his knockout power, would need to get close against someone much taller and stronger. Critics say that under normal boxing standards, a fight like this should never even be approved. On paper, Jake has the advantage in size, but Tank holds the edge in speed and skill. That's what makes this matchup so controversial. For traditional boxing fans, it's just another sign that the sport's rules are being bent to please entertainment more than competition.
How do I even start to break down a Tank Davis versus Jake Paul fight? Tank, a massively powerful fighter at 135 pounds, but his punch output is among the lowest in the sport. Jake has a pretty decent punch output for a guy that's 200 pounds. He hits hard in his own right, but doesn't have the skill and capabilities anywhere close, or the feet, or the hand speed, or the eyes anywhere close to Tank Davis, but has a power that Tank Davis has probably never felt, but just because Jake is naturally 70 pounds bigger than him, right? So 10 rounds, 3 minutes, who starts to show the wear and tear first? I know if Tank touches him on the jaw, it's probably not going to feel like roses, regardless if he's 135 or 150 or whatever he steps in that night. He's still a Tank and has still put guys down as he's gone up in weight, but Jake is just so much bigger. How much will the power that Tank has at the lower weight classes affect?
Showbiz. The adult takes a deeper look at Tank's career and how fragile his legacy has become. He points out that Tank has long been criticized for avoiding dangerous opponents. And now, by fighting Jake Paul, his credibility is at even greater risk. Showbiz argues that Lamont Roach's impressive performance against Isaac Pitbull Cruz, Tank's most talked about opponent, shows how competitive the division really is. If Roach performs better than Tank did against the same fighter, it raises serious doubts about Tank's claim to dominance. He explains that boxing is a sport built on perception. If someone beats your best win more convincingly than you did, fans start questioning your greatness. That's why he says Tank needs to be very careful about the fights he chooses. Taking on Jake Paul may bring a huge payday, but it does nothing to strengthen his resume. In fact, it only gives critics more reason to question his hunger for a true legacy.
He's better than Tank. I don't even know how you cannot have him better than Tank. People question Tank's resume anyway. But if you make Tank take a knee and they don't call it a knockdown and you still get the draw, you beat him. You beat Tank. And then you dominate Pitbull, one of Tank's best wins. Bro, you better than him. The resume, listen, bro. I didn't say greater. I said better. The resume means politics. Ryan was just saying it. Lamont Roach could have been on a back burner and they were holding him back, so he had to go down to 130, doing the grunt work like Marvelous Marvin Hagler, waiting for his time to shine. Resume, if the business chooses you, they can move you along right. He actually get cherry picked and he best Tank, and then he stops Pitbull. He's better. Y'all know how the business of boxing works. You just saw Terrence Crawford actually be the best fighter we've seen in decades. The man, Terrence Crawford, can arguably be better than Floyd Mayweather. Y'all saw the business shit him for all of his career, practically all of his career. And you see that he's better than Nello? What a surprise! We've been sitting, a guy coming from lightweight can beat Nello at super middleweight?
Lamont Roach himself adds another twist to the controversy, exposing the business politics behind the scenes. He claims that Tank was contractually supposed to go for a rematch, likely against a top contender, but instead chose Jake Paul for the easy money. Roach believes this clearly shows where Tank's priorities now lie. It's not about proving himself anymore, it's about securing quick paychecks. He emphasizes that real fighters honor their contracts and keep their word, because boxing's integrity depends on that. Roach admits that Tank has elite skills and a killer instinct, but says this decision raises serious questions about his discipline. Many fans feel disappointed and betrayed, since that rematch could have been Tank's chance to silence those who doubt his dominance.
Because if he did, even if this whole Jake situation was in the way, holler at me. Tell me you want to fight Jake. Tell me you got a bag coming up. All right, boom. Like,
go do
it's a way to handle that. We have a contract. You cannot breach a contract and think shit just gonna be sweet. You can't. You can't do that. Right. We have a contract. So it's not like this wasn't supposed to happen or whatever the case may be. He just went and took the Jake route. We had a signed contract to fight. So him breaching the contract is, if y'all put yourself in my shoes, you gotta think, I'm looking forward to fighting and getting paid. I'm looking forward to fighting and winning so I could be two-time world champ. Me. I'm in training for a fight to be a champion in another weight class and for me to be crowned champion twice in my career. And this just go and then end up announcing another fight. Put yourself in my shoes.
Did you find out just like the rest of us did?
Kinda. I was on the fence because they didn't announce. They was like, all right, we're gonna announce. All right, we're gonna announce. All right, they're gonna announce every week. All right, we're gonna announce the fight. I'm like, all right, they on the bullshit.
Max Kellerman brings a more balanced point of view to the discussion. He acknowledges Jake Paul's massive influence in the business side of boxing. Kellerman says that, like it or not, there's no fighter today who can sell tickets or generate hype the way Jake does. That's why so many professionals keep accepting fights with him, not because they respect his skills, but because they can't compete with his reach or marketing power. Jake has become the sport's biggest promotional machine, and even established champions want a piece of that spotlight. Kellerman and Paulie Malignaggi also debate whether Tank's knockout power will hold up against a naturally bigger opponent. They both agree that Tank's explosiveness is world-class, but they're unsure if it'll be enough to overcome Jake's physical advantage.
Legitimately cannot get knockouts. I agree. He can punch, but there's a lot of limited knockout artists, though, man.
He's one of the least active punchers in the game with the highest knockout percentage of current heavyweight.
But if he was a real knockout artist,
current champions.
If he was a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best of the best. Felix Trinidad was a knockout artist. He was knocking out the best of the best. If you're a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best and show us how he smokes them. But the way
Paulie,
we did when Felix Trinidad was doing it. You know? The way they did when Mike Tyson was doing it in his prime. Okay, say what you want about the Mike Tyson era. He knocked out everyone from 1986 to 1989. Everyone got knocked out. Everyone.
Well, by your standard, you could say that Tyson was to a degree manufactured.
No,
and
because
Teddy
he fought everyone that was there. Everyone that was there at that time he fought.
Teddy Atlas will 100% agree with this.
With the expense
he would say the guys
Witherspoon.
that were afraid of him.
With the exception of Witherspoon. No, but they all, doesn't matter. He knocked them all out. There was nobody you could say in that era except maybe Witherspoon, who had contract issues with King at the time. Except for Witherspoon, there is nobody Tyson didn't fight in that era. He knocked them all out.
There was hardly anyone in that era, except maybe Tim Witherspoon, who also had contract issues with Don King, that Mike Tyson didn't face. He fought and knocked out everyone available at the time. Eddie Griffin ends the discussion with a bold but thought-provoking take. He He says Jake Paul's fights are less about real competition and more about controlled entertainment. Griffin calls them Hollywood fights, suggesting that results are often guided to protect profits rather than honor true sportsmanship. He uses the Mike Tyson exhibition as an example, saying Tyson could have ended that fight easily but didn't because that wasn't part of the plan. Griffin believes a similar thing might happen in the Tank versus Jake fight, a performance built for spectacle, not authenticity. If Jake gets knocked out too quickly, the hype ends. But if he lasts longer, the profits double. He believes both camps know what's financially at stake, and that's why the fight feels more like a show than a genuine rivalry. Still, Griffin admits that fans will tune in no matter what, proving once again that controversy sells better than authenticity in today's boxing world.
I ain't even gonna call it a fight, because it ain't. If Jake Paul's involved in it, it's a great acting job. You know Mike Tyson could have just knocked Jake Paul's face into the canvas, but he got paid to pull punches, otherwise he wouldn't have got paid. I'm pretty sure the same is going for Gervonta Davis. It's a quick money grab. Man, most of y'all gonna be suckers who tune in. It's this quick money grab. That's all I'm saying. Ain't gonna be no fight. I don't give a fuck how big Jake Paul is. He can't take one of them little mother tank punches. And yeah, tank move furniture. Move furniture. Catch that motherfucking move furniture. And Jake don't like his furniture move, so he gonna pay him not to hit him again. If you really want to show out Gervonta, sign a contract that you ain't gonna hit him, because if you hit him, you lose all the money. And then whoop that motherfucker's ass, put him to sleep, and get him out the boxing game once and for all. Let's go up here.
That's all for today's video. Stay tuned, more to come soon.